And we're live again. Welcome back, everyone, to another Jig Geek live stream. My name's JG, and welcome back to Jig Geek. Today, we're going to be reviewing episode 3 of House of the Dragon season 1, and what an episode it was! What an episode! It had everything: swords and shield, dragons, pageantry, fights with animals. It had it all, and I can't wait to review this episode. But before we get started, there will be some spoilers for House of the Dragon, there will be some spoilers likely for Game of Thrones, and there will likely be some spoilers for the A Song of Ice and Fire books. There won't be any spoilers for House of the Dragon episode 4 or beyond for season 1. And yeah, before we get into it, I just want to thank everyone for the comments, for the likes, for the subscribes. And if you enjoy the content, feel free to continue to like, share, comment, tell your friends to subscribe. We're trying to build a geek community here, and every little helps, and your help certainly does go a long way. So thank you all. But with that out of the way, I think we'll get straight onto the review. Let's get the sound off so we don't get copyrighted. Now, lots happened on this. Let's get got subtitles on. Lots happened on this episode this week. We'll just skip back. I know it's blasphemy almost to skip past the credits, but I don't think they're as good as Game of Thrones, so I think we can get away with it. I know I probably said in the last one we shouldn't skip them, but there's a lot to talk about in this one. I mean, it's an hour-long episode, and a lot's happened. So we start off. Well, actually, we come to know that it's roughly 3 years after the previous episode, episode 2, and this episode's called Second of His Name. And we'll get to understand later on in the episode what that actually means. But it looks like we start off with the crab feeder, Kragas crab feeder, and the crabman, as I like to call him. And it looks like the war is raging on. Now there is a cool looking shot of him. Yeah, this guy spits bars really before his death, but he looks like he's just the latest in a long line of casualties from the crabman, and there's a great shot of the crab there. Now let's go back actually to see if we can get one further on, a shot of the crab feeder. I mean, what a shot that is! I'll tell you, most of the cinematography and the CGI, even in the whole show so far, is absolutely fantastic. And I hope it continues. I really hope it continues for the next 7 episodes. Same as Game of Thrones, this will be a 10 episode season. But it looks like we've had a lot more action, and it's not sticking to the same structure as Game of Thrones did back in its day, especially when it had 10 episodes, because you usually found 9 and 10 were more action-packed. But we have a great shot of, I'm guessing it's Caraxes. Yeah, I thought so. How Prince Daemon as this chained up folk. Burn the Triarchy. I mean, there's a lot of swearing in this one as well. But there's some great cinematography here. I mean, the CGI looks brilliant there, and I think what we're seeing is the war raging on between the Valerians, with Daemon involved as well still, like Daemon Targaryen. The dragons are involved. Whether it's not going so well at the moment, we don't find out till later on in the episode, but considering it's a lot of death and a lot of bloodshed and a lot of dragon fire, it doesn't look so good Now, where's that shot? Oh, there it is. God, what a shot that is. Now, this just goes to show that dragons, whilst powerful, are not very accurate. And they are, yes, a force for mass destruction, but they basically do whatever they like. And, you know, they are dragons. They're going to. So this poor fella here is, yeah, this poor fella's the wrath of Caraxes. But as the scene continues, it looks like that it does look like that I mean, another great shot of Caraxes there. It does look like that the crab people are retreating to the caves in order to avoid any death and any bloodshed. And I think that's quite a good realistic approach. And what it also reflects is how in the books, Dawn, so the land of Dawn, at this precise moment has actually evaded any kind of overthrow from the Targaryen kings. And that's how they evaded the attack. They fled into the mountains. They avoided any dragon fire, and they used guerrilla tactics to take on the armies and the enemies when they could, and using kind of dark arts and dirty tactics really to win. And that's how they've avoided bloodshed. They've avoided a loss, unlike the rest of the realm. So we can see them escaping into the caves, and really there's kind of no chance for Caraxes, even with his long red neck, to really do any damage in those caves. But he's still a force. I mean, that's a fantastic shot. And what I've only just realised is the mask that the crab feeder is wearing is actually a Sons of the Harpy mask. And this is in reference to the Sons of the Harpy from Game of Thrones Season 5. Now, I don't quite know what the link is here between the crab feeder and the Sons of the Harpy, but maybe he's an ex-slave, because the Sons of the Harpy look like they were either slavers themselves rebelling against Daenerys, or slaves rebelling against the whole overthrow and freeing the slaves. Maybe he's like, another kind of branch of the slaves and the slave masters, etc. So hopefully we get to find out a bit more about that connection, but it's just a great little Easter egg back to Game of Thrones Season 5. And even though Season 5 wasn't the best, it still had its high points. I mean, it had some lows, and some of the, Barristan Selmy's death wasn't so good, but it had Hardhome, it had the Jon Snow death as well, so it was a pretty good season towards the end, and it's just a nice little Easter egg. So as we're moving forward, again, the CGI is absolutely quality, but it just looks like Daemon's just wreaking havoc on whatever he can, and he wants them to, come out and face him like a man, I think. Or, well, who would though, when you're face down with a dragon? So I don't blame him for sticking in the cave, if I'm honest. Now, what it does look like, though, is he is taking on some arrows, Daemon, and it looks as if he needs to escape to avoid any harm to both him and Caraxes. But what a great opening to the show and to the episode. Now, we start off in the political side, because I like now that it's starting to branch out. It's starting to come away from just being in King's Landing. We've got a political element. We've got the war element going on now. And we've got the prophecy stuff as well. So there's starting to be multiple elements to the show now, and it's starting to be a lot less linear and contained, because I always had this fear that it would be quite a contained story. Now, unlike Game of Thrones, you were in like half a dozen different locations, and I thought that was one of its main strengths, is that there were so many storylines going on exactly the same time. There was always something interesting going on somewhere else. Whereas here, I mean, fair play to George Martin. He's crammed a lot of stuff into this story. But we have seen a lot of the episodes so far just reside around King's Landing, so it's nice to see us coming away from King's Landing for a while. But it looks like following on from episode 2, it looks like baby Aegon is growing up fast. He looks like, and I think the show tells us that he is now 2 or 3 years old. So there's been about a 3-year gap in the show. 2 years old, and already our boy is a kingly presence. So he does look a popular fellow, and with a name like Aegon, he's always going to have that tie to the throne. I think I spoke about this in my previous review, where he's always going to have this. There's always it's because of his name. He's always going to be associated with being a king and being the potential heir, and I think that's a great political play from Alicent and/or Otto to name him such, Aegon, because it sets the precedent of what his life would likely be. But these pair here have an interesting conversation. So the guy on the left is Otto Hightower, but the guy on the right is Hobart Hightower, who I think he's Lord of Hightower, and the conversation. Yeah, the conversation advances that it seems like he's pressurising Otto as Hand of the King to make Aegon heir to the throne. And this, on the surface, it just seems like someone else wants Aegon to be the king, and they don't want a woman to be heir to the throne, or eventually the queen of the 7 or the 6 kingdoms. But I personally believe that there is a Maester conspiracy going on between not just Otto now, but because we were introduced to Hobart Hightower, you've got to realise that Hightower is a family from Oldtown. And what else is in Oldtown, and this is a detail from the book, is the Citadel. And who resides in the Citadel? None other than the Maesters, and the Grey Maesters and the High Maesters. And if Melos is involved in this kind of conspiracy with Otto to marry Viserys to Alicent, there is no doubt in my mind now that all of this power play is, or could be, coming from the Maesters as well, and they are involved. So I think that we're going to see a lot more of Hobart, we're going to see a lot more of the Maesters, and there's going to be a lot more of that conspiracy. Now, I think it was In Deep Geek that did a great video on whether there's a Maester conspiracy going on in House of the Dragon. So if you haven't checked that out yet, I suggest you go and have a look for that on YouTube. But it's clear that it's clear now that they're celebrating Aegon's second name day, and there's lots to celebrate. But you can see that there's pressure from Hobart to obviously move his agenda to Otto, who is now in charge of basically persuading Viserys to name him heir to the throne. I mean, they clearly just want to follow tradition, with the king's firstborn son being the heir. I mean, what a time for, and that's a Lannister line actually. So that is Jason Lannister, who is obviously delivering a message to the king about the war that's going on in the Stepstones between Corlys, Valerion, the Valerians, Daemon, the dragons, against the Crag's crab feeder, the crabman. So he's just delivering the king some bad news, probably at completely the wrong time. But it's an urgent matter, and now we establish how long it's been. So it's been 3 years since Daemon has gone to war, since that conversation between Corlys and Daemon in Driftmark. And whilst I like the fact that there are elements to these episodes where it's slow, there's a lot of time for the scenes to breathe, and there's a lot of politics in play, there's a lot of good conversations with a lot of context. I do admire them for, instead of making travel obsolete as it was in season 7 and 8, i.e. just zooming everywhere, they've done probably the next best thing, which is to time jump. And time jumping avoids any of the awkwardness really around making travel unreasonable and making travel as quick as it was in Game of Thrones 7 and 8, because that was one of the major flaws. Clearly Viserys, I mean, he hasn't been a very good king from what we can tell at the moment. He's quite passive, and he doesn't really like to do anything big. Now he's putting off the war for another 3 days just to celebrate this. Probably as a good king, he should be doing both. He should be managing both his new son's name day, as well as the war, or putting someone in charge of this to make that decision and kind of delegate that to his master of war, or master of another member of the council. Perhaps maybe he should have just given Corlys the responsibility to do what he needs to do and to call for aid when he needs it. But nonetheless, I mean, Jason Lannister is his news is shot down. Now, I thought this was an interesting. I thought this clip and this clip were very interesting. One, you can tell that Alicent is already pregnant again with baby number 2, and secondarily, why is Viserys, as a king, why is he like getting his own food? Surely he should have people bringing that to him. And it just goes to show the type of king he is, really. I mean, he's passive. Yes, he tries to be nice to the people, and he tries to be diplomatic with his council, but he's not a very authoritative figure, and I think that's where people see him as weak. Now, back in episode 1, we had Daemon say to the king to his face that everyone sees him as weak, and this is another element to that where, he's getting his own food, he's not commanding people to do things for him, which, it goes to show he's not lazy, but equally, he doesn't operate like a real king. He doesn't operate like a real authoritative, strong figure. And I think any other king would be having like servants deliver them food and Yeah, and wait on him hand and foot. Now, as we are establishing in this scene as well, it seems that there's a lot of sellswords involved with the war, from the side of Corlys and Daemon, but they're fleeing the battle, they're fleeing the war because they know it's a losing battle. And as we've seen, it's been 3 years, the war still hasn't been won, and it's a mess. People are dying, people are fleeing, the crab feeder's still alive, so it's evident that that there's a lot of death here, and that there's been a lot of sacrifice for quite a long time. Another cracking line from Otto there. He's been delivering some of the best dialogue so far in the show. So I mean, they're passing the book here to Daemon and Corlys the Sea Snake. Otto playing the Game of Thrones again, throwing his 2 cents into the pot. Can someone tell me? Yeah. So, obviously, when we get to the Rhaenyra scene, now this guy on the left is called Samwell, and he does remind me of Jaskier from The Witcher. I must admit, I thought he was going to start banging out toss a coin to your dragon lady or toss a coin to your princess. But I thought he was he was a comical addition. And I do like the back and forth here between her and Alicent, because it's clear. Yeah, it's clear that we establish the hierarchy of things. What was interesting about the song he was playing though to Rhaenyra, and she had that on repeat like a bloody iPod shuffle, but it was regarding the Nymeria and the 10,000 Ships, which is a potential Game of Thrones spin-off show. Not really looking forward to it, but nonetheless, it was a nice little Easter egg to the book readers and those that are interested in the lore as well. There we go, from the beginning, bossing him about. And the acting here is just superb. I mean, you can tell she's bitter because Alicent's her new queen, mother-in-law, has given Viserys a son now, so there's a potential challenge to the throne, and her claim for the heir to the Iron Throne as well. And again, you can clearly see she's pregnant again, and that's probably why it probably winds up Rhaenyra even more. I wonder what she's reading. I don't think we get to find out in this episode what she's reading. But there you go, evidence of the hierarchy of things there. Your queen demands you to go at once, and here's the to and from, where he ultimately has to listen to Alicent, because Alicent now has veto power, not over the king, but pretty much over everyone else. And the scene's awkward, and it should be, and I'm glad it is, because, and I'm just so glad once again that they've made them friends. Because again, in the books, in Fire and Blood, they're not friends, and it just makes this dynamic so much better in the show. But the scene's awkward. The scene is frustrating for Rhaenyra. It's clearly a challenge for Alicent to get through to her, and Rhaenyra just doesn't want to know. I mean, look at that face. That face just says it all, really. But what they're establishing now is the hunt. So in contrast to the hunt in Game of Thrones season 1, which I think is George Martin's least favourite scene from the whole entire show, this hunt is to celebrate baby Aegon's birthday, name day. So now I thought it was just the whole, yeah, I thought it was just brilliant that they were all in there. And again, the acting's fantastic from the actress who plays Rhaenyra here. So, and I just think it's again, it's another awkward scene, establishing that there's a weird relationship between Rhaenyra, her father, and Rhaenyra and Alicent. And to be fair, the baby being there just kind of makes matters worse. Now again, Rhaenyra being quite cheeky and backchatting her father there, not impressed, doesn't want to know now, and obviously is clearly pissed off with her father and pissed off with Alicent for challenging her reign to the throne. What Viserys is trying to get through to her, though, is despite her position as heir still, technically, because we don't know otherwise that she's not heir, and despite the awkward situation that her once best friend is now her mother-in-law and the Queen, and despite them having a son, she still has royal duties. She still has a lot to do as a princess of the crown, as a Targaryen princess, and it's evident that Viserys doesn't want her to forget these duties and still wants her to fulfill whatever she's got to do in terms of whether that's marriage, whether that's just princess stuff. But again, the acting here from Paddy Considine is brilliant. Again, just shrugging off all of the negative energy that Rhaenyra's throwing at him, taking the piss out of her a little bit. You wouldn't need to be reminded of them. But this is a stark contrast. This hunt compared to Game of Thrones season 1. I think that was just 4 blokes wandering through the woods. But here, and at George Martin's request, there's more pageantry, there's more flags. It should be an event, and that's what George Martin said. It should be a mass event for people to turn up to. It's not just like a few of the boys in the woods going to find a stag or a boar or whatever. So it's it's like a big thing in Westeros, according to George Martin. So I'm glad they've hyped up a lot of the. Look at the size of it. It's just that's a fantastic shot actually, and look and the size of it compared to what we had in season 1. But as we've got King's Landing in the background, it's evidencing the fact that this is in the Kingswood. So that is a greenery setting just outside of King's Landing that only the king or only the king is allowed to hunt in. And if you cast your mind back to last episode, when Rhaenyra was choosing the new Kingsguard, when she eventually went with Criston Cole, but the first guy that came to, I can't remember his name, but the first guy that came to stand in front of Rhaenyra, he actually, his kind of claim to fame almost, is the fact that he caught someone poaching and hunting in the Kingswood. So I thought that was a nice little callback. Now here we've got the Strongs. So we've got Lionel Strong in the middle, who we've seen at court. We've got Clubfoot on the left, and we've got I can't remember his name, but his nickname is Breakspear, and the guy on the right is meant to be the strongest warrior in the Seven Kingdoms. I mean, they could have made him a bit more, but nonetheless, he's known as Breakspear. And again, the Lannisters are in full force, and the guy in the middle, Jason Lannister, he's the one that delivered that message to Viserys a couple of scenes ago. But quick fact about Jason Lannister, he actually played a character in Game of Thrones season 1. Now, he wasn't in it for very long because he was in the joust in season 1, and he died like instantaneously, basically. But if you want to see him in Game of Thrones, check out the season 1 episode with the jousting. So again, I thought that was a good callback there. But as they arrive, everyone's there to welcome the king. You can see the king. Everyone loves the king. Hail Aegon, the Conqueror Babe, second of his name. Now, Hobart Hightower is referring to the baby here as if Aegon is the heir, and I think it's great, use of language and choice of dialogue there, because it insinuates that he doesn't believe Rhaenyra is the heir. He thinks it's the babe. Yeah, he doesn't think he's the he doesn't think he's the babe. He doesn't think Rhaenyra's the heir, and that's clear in his choice of language. What we've got though is obviously everyone applauding the new baby, applauding the firstborn son of the king, and then we've got Rhaenyra, poor thing, on her own. No one probably loves her anymore. She feels downtrodden. She feels like she's purposeless now. Again, though, great acting, and the facial expressions and everything is brilliant. But again, I love all the pageantry. I love the extras. All the detail. It's so impressive. This, and it really feels like Game of Thrones did back in its earlier days, and that's why I'm really enjoying this so far. As we see Rhaenyra wandering through the what looks like the king's tent, she's eavesdropping on a couple of the conversations. And Alt Shift X did a great breakdown of this episode where he goes into detail about what some of the women are saying. But what we have is Clubfoot, because he's unable to join the lads for the hunt. He's sitting with the women. Now, an interesting point I heard on, I think it was Alt Shift X's video, in his breakdown. I think his name is actually like Caris, which is similar to Varys. And from the Strongs, Clubfoot, I think, is more political, a bit of like a Tyrion, like he's very strategic. He's more talking and conversations, and he fights battles with words and not with sword and shield, really. Yeah, so they're talking about the war, and they obviously clock that Rhaenyra's there. They're all blaming, obviously, Daemon and Corlys for the war. But as we've established 3 years down the line, Daemon's been at war, and excuse me, Daemon's been at war, and they haven't been in contact. So, yeah. So clearly, Rhaenyra doesn't know what's going on. But I think they're having a bit of a bitch about the war. There's clearly blame to Daemon, and yeah, they clearly know that Daemon isn't doing a very good job at the moment. What they do establish, though, is that the women think that the crown should send men and ships to just end the war for good. And everyone loves the pug. Now, I'm glad they've used a book name. I mean, Lady Redwine isn't just a random name that they've used, and that's what I was searching for. In the book, the Redwines are quite a politically driven household. Now, they weren't so big in the Game of Thrones TV show, but they do still present themselves in the books, and it's great to see the name being brought up in House of the Dragon as well. So I thought that was a great little I thought that was a great little callback to the books there again. But it's clearly she's not having any of it from the women, scorning her uncle. Oh, they look nice. The pigs. Now we're greeted to Jason Lannister again, who is by far the most charismatic yet arrogant member of this cast we have met so far. And typical Lannister, as we move the scene on, talks about having enough gold to build basically a kennel for the dragons, much like a dragon pit, much like Rhaenyra's got in her, in King's Landing. Another quick fact as well about Jason Lannister: there's a twin of Jason, Tyland Lannister, and he's actually played by the same person. So he's playing both of the twins. And talking about the wine, the hunt, and then he name drops Casterly Rock. The name drop the wall. And this is where he starts getting a bit flirtatious with her. And this is the point I made about the dragon pit. He's clearly trying to woo her with his the name, of course, the lineage. He knows she's single. He knows that his father wants her to marry. And look, I mean, he's got a lot of money. He's obviously got a lot of political power. He's one of the biggest houses in the realm. He's got a lot of resources. So he's making his move, and what more could a girl want with dragons than somewhere to keep them while she's doing Casterly Rock stuff? But I think she's having none of it. And the sass there from Rhaenyra is just next level. You see, the king wants her to marry. The king wants her to find a husband. He wants her to settle down. He wants her to be happy, but herself above the Lannisters. She thinks herself above the gold, the resources, the land, the castle. She thinks herself above all of that because her name, her crop as a Targaryen, is above everyone. It's like the cream of the crop. And being the princess, yeah, being a princess, she thinks she deserves better. But I thought this was one of the best scenes in the whole episode, because we find out that she doesn't wish to get married, Rhaenyra. But again, one of the best lines delivered by Paddy Considine is what he's saying on screen now, and I think he just delivers it perfectly. And you can tell he's kind of raised his voice where he shouldn't, and everyone's watching, and he's basically giving her a what for. But what we can see is Otto sticking his nose in and calming the king down, as he's done on a number of occasions. Now, he did it last episode when he went to Dragonstone, and he's done it on a couple of occasions in the first episode, where when Queen Emma died, he basically summoned him in the middle of the night after that had happened to talk about the succession. So on a number of occasions now, he's almost told the king what to do. And in the world of Game of Thrones, it's often said that it's the hand who has all the power. The king is more a face of the realm and a face of the crown. So it's interesting that Otto seems to think he's got that level of power and influence over the king. Another interesting point then, and relating to the purpose of the scene about them going on the hunt, is in order to find a white hart stag. Now, the killing of a white hart stag and the hunting of a white hart stag is linked to strength, is linked to finding like an omen, and the one that kills the white hart stag is meant to be given then good fortune, good future, and good luck. So I thought that was now I don't know whether they were on they did similar in Game of Thrones season 1, but this is all in aid to to kind of boost the name Prince Aegon. This is all going towards Prince Aegon's name day. It's not really to bolster the king, it's to bolster his son. It's clearly Rhaenyra's had enough, so she's off out. And then we've got a great shot of Kristen Cole in his armour, looking like Moon Knight from the Marvel Disney shows. And she's off, she's had enough. So he goes running after, we get a horse ride, we get a horse chase. And it's a sweet little relationship they're developing here, and you can clearly see that they've started bonding, because he's kind of her sworn sword now, and they've started to develop a not relationship, but there's definitely we definitely saw something there from episode 1, and it's evident that they get along. But I know she's a bit annoyed that her father wanted to sell her off to Jason Lannister, and again it's another piece of evidence that she thinks she's above the Targaryen name, thinks it's above any of the other houses. And I thought it was funny when he said, "You want me to kill him?" Because he probably could, and they could probably find a reason for him to do it. So yeah, I thought that was funny, and they have a little joke about it. But here you can see that they're getting along. We're getting to know a bit more of the backstory of Kristen Cole, about his time before being a member of the Kingsguard. And obviously Rhaenyra is a bit envious of him because he gets to make his own decisions. But yeah, as Kristen Cole's saying here, anyone or many people would swap places with Rhaenyra, but it's all circumstantial, isn't it? I suppose, everyone's got their own situations and issues and to deal with, and I suppose it's, we can clearly see the princess has got her own issues, and the king's got the biggest problems. Many of them he's not dealing with. But Rhaenyra looks like she wants to deal with her problems and fight them head on. And I think that was a nice contrast between the two of them. Now, another callback to the Game of Thrones show is the White Book. And if you cast your mind back to, I think it was season 7, where Jaime, it might have been season 6. I mean, I know it was in season 8, but we were introduced to it first in season 6 or 7. Jaime talks about all the members of the King's Guard are written into the White Book. Now, the White Book details the position and the duration, and what that member of the King's Guard has done in their time. Now, whether it's themselves that writes in the White Book or someone else, and as we clearly saw in season 8, Brienne was writing on behalf of Jaime in the White Book. It's got some great names in there later on down the line, but at this point, there's probably not too many big names. But as we move forward into like the Game of Thrones era, you had Sir Arthur Dayne, you had Sir Barristan Selmy, and then obviously we move into like Jaime Lannister, of course. But at this point, there probably isn't too many big names that I can recall anyway. It's still a big thing though to be in the book and to talk about what you've done as a member of the King's Guard. But it's clear to see the contrast here, because Criston Cole's talking about, although he's just a King's Guard, it's the highest thing anyone in his family's ever had to do, and compared to what Rhaenyra's going through, he would happily swap places with her. But again, it's great to see the relationship building, and it's great to see. It'll be great to see what happens with them two in episodes to come. So we move then swiftly on to the hunt itself, or the beginning of the hunt anyway. The king stepping royally off his horse, and this is what George Martin intended for this for these hunts. It should be a big event. There should be loads of people there, all the boys, and a few of the women, and loads of horses. They're all looking for the stag, for the prize, and it should be a major event, not 4 blokes wandering through the woods. So I can see why he didn't like that episode in Game of Thrones. But the White Hart Stag, as mentioned here, again is a symbol of royalty. If you capture it, it's meant to be like a good omen and good luck. So that's the purpose. Now, an interesting point here is it all seems to be very coincidental. Today they're there. There just so happens to be a White Hart Stag. It's all seems like a bit of a pre-planned event and a bit coincidental. But we move swiftly on to the what looks like the feast. Everyone's tucking in. Got baby Aegon there, being seen to by the by the helpers, and then I presume that's Jason Lannister presenting the king with a with a forged new spear for Prince Aegon's name day. And whilst the king looks like he wants to be impressed, I don't think he really is impressed. Because what do you really give a king who's got a dragon and a massive castle and all the money in the world? Well, you don't give him a spear, but he makes a good point. You can use that to kill the stag, so he's trying to butter him up as well. But then they move on to the conversation with him and Rhaenyra, and I think after the conversation Rhaenyra and Viserys had earlier on, it's clear Viserys knows that Jason Lannister isn't the one for him, isn't the one for his daughter, and I think he does a bit of a switcheroo now and starts challenging Jason about the strength of House Targaryen and really questioning his motives now. And I thought this was a really good scene. Now he's obviously trying to fight his cause because he wants Rhaenyra by his side. He wants her as Queen of Casterly Rock. Why wouldn't you getting involved with the Targaryens and the king? But what good is compensation to the king, really? And again, it's another jibe here that the Lannisters think baby Aegon is the heir now because he's the firstborn son, which is another kick in the teeth for both Viserys and Rhaenyra. So it's interesting to see who now starts to believe that the baby, the firstborn son, is the heir versus the current heir, Rhaenyra. And I think that will develop as we move on into the rest of the show. Certain people will go one side, and I think certain people will go another. That's not a book spoiler. That's what I think that they'll do. But here we can clearly see that he's had a few beers, Viserys, and he's starting to get a little bit pissed off with Jason Lannister's tone and attitude and arrogance, and I don't think it's the right course of action to use with the king, really. And it's starting to hit home that people are questioning the heir. People are questioning his decision to make Rhaenyra the heir, and people are starting to make assumptions that the baby Aegon is the new heir because he's the firstborn son. But it's a great point that he makes here, which is if you're questioning the king's decision, it's clearly an act of treason and an act of rebellion against the crown. And I love the acting from Paddy Considine here, because he goes from thanks for the spear to you're treasonous and you're acting there's a potential treasonous act here. So I just love the twist. I mean, thanks for the gift and bugger off. But you can see he's getting a bit pissed off, and it's all starting to get a bit too much for him. We've got the war in the Stepstones. We've got the choice of heir. We've got the pressure about the hunt as well. We've got the people are now starting to believe that some of his decisions are questionable. People are starting to assume things that the king isn't saying. It's all starting to kind of layer on top of one another now. And this is the first crack in the armour, I believe. He's going to get, and I think it will get worse and it will get more, it will get bigger and bigger. that crack will as the season goes on, I think. And again, some great acting by Paddy Considine. I mean, he's changed his tune pretty quick because I think he knows now that she doesn't want to get married, but equally, she thinks herself above the likes of the Lannisters. But I think he's seen the error in the error in his ways, and even though she's a princess and she's the heir, she should really have her own. She should make her own decisions, really, and they should talk about this amicably. And I know that's probably not what usually happens, but I think because he's quite a passive king, in this instance, the only person he's not really been passive with is Rhaenyra, and saying, listen, you're going to marry someone. Yes, you are the heir, but you've still got to marry someone. So I think he's just going back to modus operandi here, where passiveness, letting people make their own decisions, and letting people have more control than what a king would usually have. Yeah, he's talking with his father hat on now rather than in his king hat. But I thought this was an interesting idea from Otto, which is to propose Prince Aegon and Rhaenyra get together. Now, what's interesting in the show is the age difference between Alicent and Viserys is bigger than what the age difference is between Rhaenyra and baby Prince Aegon. So, whilst it sounds like a daft idea, it would solve a lot of problems. And I know the whole incest thing is very Targaryen, but it's a bit dodge. It would solve a lot of problems. It would solve the heir problem. It would solve the lineage problem. It would solve the crown issue. They could reign as king and queen together, and it would probably make it still keeps the bloodline pure. It still keeps like the dragon piece pure, where they can, their children will be dragon riders. It probably adds an element of political strength to the household as well. Now we'll know they're not branching out to kind of in two different directions, i.e. two different families to have more Targaryen children. It does stop any questioning, and it is probably politically the right thing to do. Now, whether Otto's saying that in a bit of a double-eyed snake way, i.e. like reverse psychology, or what about this daft idea? Because there's clearly still the motive there for Otto to get Prince Aegon on the throne. And whether he's having little conversations or whether the maesters are having conversations with the houses to say, oh, Prince Aegon's the heir to the throne now, still remains to be seen. But he's, in my eyes, he proposed this as a bit of a daft idea because he knew Viserys wouldn't take it. I mean, you can clearly see Viserys is starting to have enough. He's had enough of the air and the whole politics behind it and all of and it's just another decision he's thrown under the rug to forget about for another day, and he's starting to get to him. More drink. Now, this is very evident of Robert Baratheon, and it did remind me when I watched it the first time that about Robert Baratheon's drinking, and he always used to make some shady decisions after a few beers. But who we have here is Lionel Strong, who sits on the King's Council. The only man giving the king honest advice, really. some interesting backstory there about previous Targaryen kings, i.e. Jaehaerys having daughters and them being or children and them being like the thorn in his side and causing him the most headache rather than the throne or rather than the realm itself. But he's establishing again his Sir Harwin Strong, which is Breakbones, which is his son, who I mentioned in the earlier part of this review. Now, interestingly, we'll see Sir Laenor Velaryon later in the episode, but what Lionel Strong offers is to, instead of marrying the king to Laenys, who we seen last episode, that awkward scene in the courtyard, is to marry Corlys Velaryon's son to Rhaenyra, because again it would tie the houses together. The blood is strong for them both. It's from Valyria, and it's another logical power play politically, but also from a more bloodline perspective. Now, he talks sense, this guy, and I know he's quite quiet at the council, but even in the books, he's regarded as quite a slow character, and I mean that in both. He's not as quick as others to the table to speak their mind at the council, but when he does speak, he's always got something really to offer. And it's clear again that they're building him up as quite a wise player in the Game of Thrones here. So again, it's an interesting idea for the king to consider. Talks about Laenor's, the perks of him marrying Rhaenyra, and there's clearly still a drift between Corlys snobbing Laena and going with Alicent for the queen, for the role of queen, and now to birth him some heirs and some sons. So again, Lionel Strong giving him a good point in terms of it would bridge the gap between that era and narrow the bring the families close together again. So he talks some sense, this guy. But we've established that the king sees his counsel and his words of wisdom as wise, and he really does take it on board. But again, he's made no decision. He's swept it under the rug again. I know he's had a few beers or wine or whatever, but again, it's another. It's another decision he hasn't made. I mean, some more sass from Rhaenyra there, being annoyed with her father. But again, just developing that relationship between her and Kristen Cole, and I think that's going to be a real important relationship moving forward, whatever happens, really. But an interesting question she poses here, which is, do you think the realm will ever accept me as their queen? And it goes back to probably my previous point, which is, I think eventually, and for those that have read the books obviously know what happened, but for those that don't, my opinion on this is it will eventually get to a standoff where people will make a choice. I mean, we can clearly see people are already starting to make a choice. Like the Lannisters have made the assumption that Prince Aegon is to be heir now because he's the firstborn son. But there will be a standoff between those that think Rhaenyra is the rightful heir because people have bowed, people have took that oath, and people have listened to what the king wanted, or the rightful heir in the eyes of some men and the maesters, which is the firstborn son. But Kristen Cole offers her valuable insight here. And whilst it's a wise response, it's probably quite short-sighted, because at the moment, yes, it's true, they'll have no choice to make her queen and to make her the heir, but what's going to happen when Viserys dies? What's going to happen when he goes? That's where it'll get juicy. Or this is the part with the boar. I love this bit, and I absolutely bricked it when I was watching this the first time. Is that bit there? When it come out of nowhere. He's a beautiful boy. Now I thought it was a bit too aggressive here, because I thought she'd had it now. I thought she'd had it when the ball was on top of her. But you can clearly see the Targaryen firing her now and taking all of her frustrations out about her father, about Alicent, about the new baby, about the snub, about people thinking she's not the heir. She's taking all of her frustrations out on this poor boar. And yeah, it nearly killed her, but you can see the emotion in her face, and it's just taking, it's took everything, it's took a lot out of her, all of these quick decisions in a few years, and it's really got to her, not just politically, and not just in terms of her succession, but from an emotional standpoint as well. She feels almost like betrayed by her friends. She feels pissed off with her dad, and she's just let rip on that ball then. But this is probably this is one of my, and you know from the previous two reviews, and you'll know, you'll start to know as we explore more House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones content on the channel. I love the prophecy stuff. I love the prophecy stuff in the books. I loved the prophecy stuff in the Game of Thrones show, and I love the fact that they've brought prophecy to the table in House of the Dragon. And I love this scene because it's another prophecy element. Just touching on Rhaenyra's nickname there, which we don't hear that often, and I think we heard it in the first episode, if I recall. But the Realm's Delight is what the king has named her. Now, what I've only just realised is he named her not for political reasons, and not because she's the best fit, but out of love and out of spite to protect the realm from Daemon. And that's only just occurred to me, and it's a very important point, because it's, again, he's thinking with his father hat on and not with his king hat on. Any other king probably, maybe, would have gone with Daemon as heir. Probably. I mean, I'm thinking about a couple of kings before. The king died and it went to the brother, and not the children. So it's interesting there. Again, he's thought with his father hat on and not with his king hat on, and time again now he's starting to do that more often, and it's starting to the ripple effect is really starting to take its toll now. Some of the poor decisions he's making are starting to grow and become bigger problems for him. Now this is where the prophecy stuff kicks on. There we go, next to the power of prophecy. Love it. Love it. So he talks again about what he said to Queen Emma in the first episode about a male babe being born with a crown on his head, and he really wanted it to be true. And I think he's kind of got it right and kind of got it wrong here, because he talks about that it never came again. And it's interesting, dreams in the Song of Ice and Fire books, and even, House of the Dragon so far. You can have a dream and you can think it's true, and these Targaryens think it's true, but sometimes it might not work out the way you think. Now, in this case, I reckon in some people's eyes, he will have had a son, and it will have been born with a metaphorical crown on its head, because regardless of whether the king believes he has given Rhaenyra the heir, the title heir to the throne, power resides where men believe it resides, and those men may believe that Aegon is the rightful heir to the throne. And if that's the case, it doesn't matter what Rhaenyra thinks, or when the king passes, it doesn't really matter what he thought and what he did. It matters what the people think. But obviously he talks about his grief about losing Emma, and it being a real prophetic dream that has took it this far, and he always wanted that male heir, and she could never give him it, and it was probably her biggest regret. But it was just a dream, and I think he got it wrong with Emma. I think in terms of this relationship is where he has the son that people will think is born with the crown, is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. I mean, that shot's brilliant with the fire. That's just another fantastic piece of cinematography, and just another great effect. He's clearly, Viserys is clearly doubting his decisions again, and you can't really do that as a king. You've just got to make a decision, stick with it, be confident with it, and move on, and make sure it's the right one, and make sure that it comes to fruition, and make sure that even if it is the wrong thing to do, you stick by it, and you just go with it. I mean, to declare that, you can clearly see that they've established more of a loving, trustful relationship here, because he's confiding in her. I know he's drunk, but he's confiding in her, and he's being honest about prophecy, and he's been honest about his doubts and his mistakes. Yeah, and he clearly he thinks that naming her might have been the wrong decision. But again, it just shows that he's a weak king, and he's doubting his own power and his own decision making. And you never know, she might end up taking this information back to Otto and Melos, maybe, or just even her father, and discussing it with her father. And whilst I don't think we get to see that, I think that's likely the dynamic, what's going on. Now, the day of the hunt, all the boys are still together, back together again, and interesting line that was said before we see the boar is, King, we've got a stag. Sorry, not a boar, a stag. We've got the stag. Now it's not a white one, but it'll do. And it's clear that this just isn't Viserys's time, because again, the whole point of the White Hart stag is about that power and the good omens and the good luck and stuff. And the fact that they haven't found the White Hart stag, and they've just found some random stag, is relating to the fact that he isn't doing a very good job, and he likely won't do a good job in the future. Now we get the staff from the Lannisters, and I mean the poor thing's been dragged from pillar to post here. Let's get a shot of him. I mean, it's a great scene. It's like really like detailed and stuff. But it takes a couple of goes, as the bloke said, a couple of times. Once more, Your Grace, bit to the left. And it just shows he's not clinical. He doesn't get stuff done first time around, and his poor ability again in front of everyone is there to be seen. He's just not good enough as the king, and his ability to make decisions and to execute on decisions is just not there. So again, he has to give it another go. And this time, obviously, he gets it right, but it could be metaphorical in the sense that it's going to take two goes, or it's going to take, his second go at things will be potentially the right thing. And what I mean by that is he's made a mistake with Rhaenyra. Maybe the way to go with things is to name Aegon, i.e. metaphorically, the second child. Maybe that's the course of action he should take for the throne. I mean, what a shot that is. Bloody hell, it's beautiful. And she's still got the blood in her hair. Fair play to her. Who do we have here? The White Hart stag. And Rhaenyra knows what all that is about, and what that symbolism is, and what it means to her. Because this now means that, metaphorically, she is the chosen one. She is the one now with the luck of the draw and the good omens, the good vibes. And she is the one, if it means, if it's true, if it's true, i.e. the whole thing about the stag, she's the one she's the one to rule the realm, to be the heir, not Aegon. Because don't get me wrong, it was Viserys that killed the stag, and he took a couple of attempts, and it wasn't a White Hart stag, but all that was in aid and in celebration of Aegon's birthday. Her seeing the White Hart stag now cements in her head that she's the heir, she's the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. And what's interesting is she tells Christian Cole not to kill it, but wouldn't it be good if he did, or she did, and she took that back to the camp and be like, look at me, bitches, look what I've managed to do, and look what that represents. But no. In contrast to what we saw with the boar, what we saw here is her placid side. She can be nice. She's got that Targaryen fire and blood side to her, but on the flip side, she's got that real tranquil, peaceful, forgiving, kind of, somber side to her as well, which is probably what you need. You need to know when to use those different sides, though. I mean, it's a great shot of her bringing the ball back, though, and showing everyone what she can do. And everyone's obviously staring, but she doesn't care. Look what I've done, folks. Look what I can do. Another great shot of King's Landing there. I mean, yeah, some of the scenery so far. Is that a bird or is that a dragon? Like in that top corner there. Yeah, some of the scenery is just fantastic. Now I thought this was quite an awkward relationship they've got going on now, Otto and Alicent, because I don't know if we can find it, but he does speak to her as has he said it? Oh, Your Grace. There you go. He now regards her as more of a political pawn on the board, as opposed to regarding her still as his daughter. Yeah, it's probably out of respect, but in Otto's eyes, Alicent is just a pawn to be used for his grander gain, I think, and which he has been. But he's still got to play the game, hasn't he? Now, I mean, that's an interesting line. Is again another player who believes that Aegon is the future of the realm, who is the heir to the throne, not Rhaenyra. The breadcrumbs are starting to form here, and they're doing ever so well with just eavesdropping them in now and again. We've had the Lannisters say something. We've seen what his motivations are about getting Alicent into Viserys's pocket. We had the Lannisters say, as I said, and now we've got Otto kind of verbalising his intentions to make Aegon. Oh, we had Hobart Hightower as well, making his intentions clear about what it should be. So now Otto's verbalising and agreeing with those intentions. Great piece of dialogue there, how he's spinning this, i.e., Aegon's brought everyone together, he's brought the realm together, he's brought the men of Westeros together. And whilst Rhaenyra did bring some of the lords to King's Landing, I think it was a line here, or it was when Kristen Cole and Rhaenyra were talking about, did the king put on a similar show for you, Rhaenyra, and on your second name day? And obviously she's not going to remember, but did he? I don't think he did, by the sounds of the conversation. Aegon Long, his namesake, was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms. So it's evident that whether it's Hobarts, whether it's the Maesters, whether it's Otto, whether it's all three of them, they're all in agreement. He's pushing the agenda now onto Alicent to convince Viserys that Aegon should be the heir to the Iron Throne. He should be the one to rule the Seven Kingdoms in the future. I mean, every mother, he's just said every mother would want their son to be king. For anyone to step over Aegon, the realm would tear itself apart. Again, he's pushing the agenda here. He's trying to make sure that Alicent sees his way, because what Alicent says in this scene is Rhaenyra's the heir. Everyone came down. Everyone swore the oath. Everyone, all the lords came down and in front of gods and men, and the king. They all swore their sword and their name to Rhaenyra. Obviously, Otto's got different plans here. And she's just still trying to back Rhaenyra, but I think she's fighting a losing battle here. And again, it's Aegon that's being robbed. because Otto's again pushing the agenda that it's Aegon's birthright. He's the firstborn son. He's the rightful heir now, and I think we'll start to see that grow in Alicent's head, but equally we'll start to see that grow in certain other families dotted about the map. Another great line: the road ahead is uncertain, but the end is clear. Now again, he's pushing her as a pawn in the Game of Thrones to go and speak with Viserys, to go and talk with him, persuade him, do whatever she needs to do in order to convince him that baby Aegon is the rightful heir. She's being used as a pawn, clearly, for his own, or probably his own family's now agenda to rise up in the ranks. Just want to see if we can get the shot of his fingers. No. Oh, there we go. Quick one on the fingers. In episode 1 we saw him scratch his finger against the Iron Throne. Episode 2 we saw him put his hand into the maggots, and Melis trying to get rid of the rot. And we saw in episode 1 actually about the cut on his back. Now again, this has festered now for years, and because of his indecision to just get rid of the fingers and avoid the rot, it's a decision he again hasn't taken, and B, it's almost a great metaphor for his reign as king so far. He's not making any of these decisions and he's rotting away basically, and essentially that's what's happening to his power as king. He's not making any of these decisions, and his title and his legacy as king is rotting away, simply. It's a great little detail that they're building up. Maybe in the next episode, maybe he's got no hand. We'll see. But I think they're great line from Alicent here, and you can tell that the relationship is a lot more relaxed now. She's not fidgeting with her nails, or the skin on her nails, and since she's become queen, yes, she's still Otto's political pawn to be moved about the board, but she knows she's got power now and influence, and she's starting to play the Game of Thrones herself a lot better, or playing it for the first time, I suppose. But planting that little seed into Viserys' mind, because she's her friend, is another great aspect to the fact that they've built up that relationship between Alicent and Rhaenyra. And he clearly likes that idea that the decision shouldn't come from Viserys top down. It should come from Rhaenyra herself, and it be quite a it's got to come from her. She's got to marry someone that she wants, she loves potentially, and the decision's got to come from her, not the king, and not from her father either. So we've just heard from Viserys about Vaemond Valerion, who is Corlys's younger brother, and the letter is asking for aid because the war's still going on. It's been 3 years now since the war, and clearly the Crown haven't got involved. Clearly the Crown haven't got involved. But I think Alicent brings out another side to him, a more loving side, a more family side. But I don't really know if she's ever. I mean, it sounds loving and like, you know, tapping into the side that loves his brother. But is it politically charged? What she's saying, it comes across that way. And maybe he's latched onto it there. I mean, he doesn't do something. This is the thing now. He's in a catch-22 now because he doesn't do something, and he potentially loses the war on the stepstones, and the crab feeder wins. If he does do something though, it looks like the war, and because the war is representing the crown, and it now looks like the crown are losing if he sends men. So he's in a bit of a catch-22. Don't do something, lose. Do something and look weak, because he's having to send additional aid. But again, if he doesn't do something, then it's probably not good for Corlys, for the Valerians, and for Daemon. And I don't think he wants to anger them anymore. But Alicent makes a great point in that if you don't do something and the crab feeder wins, or even thrives even more so, that wouldn't be so good for the realm. And it brings an interesting, it brings almost an Otto-like approach to her speech here, i.e. she's thinking how her dad would think. So I thought that was a really interesting line. But basically, what's the better outcome here? The crab feeder wins. That's not good for the realm. Or you send aid. Yeah, the crown looks weak for a while, but the crab feeder loses and the war's over. And again, he likes that idea and he contemplates it. And we've got to remember that guy because he comes up in the episode, the poor man. He's clearly getting annoyed now by Rhaenyra's constant back chat and battles with every conversation that they have. But she's still pissed off with his decision. Some of the decisions he has made have been wrong in her eyes, and the decisions he hasn't been made, that's been wrong in her eyes as well. But all of the decisions or the non-decisions have affected her in one way or another, and you know, anyone would be annoyed at this point. But again, now, I mean, what I felt in this scene was he's still got his father hat on. He hasn't got his king's hat on. He's not commanding. He's asking her if the decisions he's making are okay, and she's happy with them. That's not really what a king should be doing. And it's clear that Rhaenyra is now questioning whether Viserys thinks that the boy, his new baby boy, is the heir that he's always wanted, and is she getting thrown out? She clearly thinks, as I said earlier, she's got no purpose. But dropping some great lines here. I mean, this one. Vultures to the carcass, feeding on her bones. I mean, what a great line that was. But here, I know he's thinking with his dad hat on now, and he clearly loved her mother, and yes, he clearly loved her mother, and yes, he Yeah, he clearly loved her mother, and yes, he had to remarry, um, for political strength. But on both occasions, he's done it out of love. He did it out of love because if it was all for politics, the second time around especially, he should have married the Valerians. He should have married the Valerians' daughter and strengthened himself politically and the Valerians politically there. But he did it out of love with Alicent. And even though it was still a strong political power play, it wasn't as strong as it would have been with the Valerians. So that's what he's expressing to Rhaenyra here. Strengthen your own claim, but do it on your terms. Strengthen the Targaryen name. Search him out. Do it on your terms. Make sure he is the one that you want, and make sure that it's your decision. It shouldn't come from me as a king to marry you off. It shouldn't come from me as a father to marry you off. It's got to be your decision, as it was his decision to do the same thing. And she likes that, and obviously you can tell it's a very emotional scene because she didn't expect him, like Rhaenyra didn't expect him to say that. No, these two have got a great dynamic. You can really tell there's a lot of emotion there, and the acting is just brilliant. Oh, we've got the cat's paw dagger there again. Keeps subtly showing us that as well. I think he's trying to reinforce the idea that to make sure that she knows she's still the heir, even though there's people out there saying baby Aegon should be the heir. She's questioning and she's doubting her title as the heir. I mean, even Daemon's kind of pissed her off about him living in Dragonstone and in the previous episode and stepping on her toes as to being the heir, but he's trying to reinforce that you're still the heir. You're not going to be supplanted. Now, whether she believes that is a different kettle of fish, really, but we'll see. Now, on to the best part of this episode, which is Daemon Targaryen. And that's why he's on the front of this thumbnail, because this episode goes to none other, and we'll see him in a moment, because he's arriving on Dragonback. Some of the CGI is brilliant. Look at that. Redneck Longboy. Caraxes touching down. Now that is Vaemon Velaryon, who sent call for aid to the king. He's the younger brother of Corlys. He wasn't the Lord, and Corlys' older brother, who was Lord of Driftmark. He's now the younger brother who's a commander in Corlys' army. Very opinionated, very strong-minded. Corlys looking absolutely badass in his armour as well. That's a good shot. Oh, so this guy, and because it's been 3 years, he's obviously had a bit of a growth spurt. This guy is Laenor Velaryon, who Lionel Strong spoke about earlier in the episode to marry up Laenor and Rhaenyra to bolster the pairing between the Targaryens and the Velaryons. So yeah, he's grew a bit, he's changed a bit, but clearly they've done the right thing with the time jump, and they're making the most of it in including Laenor in this scene as well. Now it's just established there that they think Daemon's the reason why they're losing the war. And he's starting to question Daemon, and he's starting to question Daemon's leadership about the about the war here. But Corlys knows it's the wrong decision to make, and I think if they were to have lost Daemon and lost the dragon, they would have absolutely 100% lost this war, regardless of mutiny. I think, because you start putting doubt in these soldiers' mind, and obviously they'll end up going their own ways. So Corlys isn't having any of it. But what a badass entrance! That armor, that Valyrian steel armor, just looks absolutely amazing. And he just every scene he's in, he just steals the show. Now where is it? Where he gets? This is it now. This is it. There you go. There's the thumbnail. Contemplates what he's wrote. Just beats the living hell out of him. I just thought that was brilliant. And it takes a few men to get him off. Now, what I liked is the voiceover from Viserys here. So he's ordered 10 ships, 2,000 men. So basically, the letter from Viserys is him sending aid, and obviously Daemon has took that the wrong way and has took that to heart, and he's took it as a sign of his weakness, because Viserys now knows that Daemon is losing the war. So what does Daemon do? Well, first off, he takes a flag of surrender to the crabman, to crab feeder, and then draws his sword, Dark Sister, in a sign of he's willing to put down his arms. And obviously crab feeder knows what this is about. Well, he thinks he knows what this is about. Obviously, he's trying to get all his men out, and then the dragon's going to take him out. And that's what he's checking for there. But he signals his men to start going for Daemon. Signals the bowman to start drawing at Daemon. And Daemon's there, just chilling, just waiting for the right time. Bosh! Ah, yes! And this is one of the most badass scenes I've ever seen. And this is what it needed. This is what the show needed. A bit of action. Daemon just absolutely slaughtering them all. And he's still checking for that dragon. Absolutely slaughtering everyone. Just getting shit done. Taking on everyone. Now, what I do like is eventually he does get taken by a few arrows, and I thought surely at some point he was going to get shot at, and they were going to get it. The arrows were going to make an impact, and I'm glad they did, because, well, who could really survive all of those arrows? Still waiting for that dragon. He knows what's coming. The crab feeder does. He knows what's coming, or he thinks he knows what's coming. And you think all is lost. I mean, I thought he was just going to take them all on. I thought he would have stood there and took the lot on, like Captain America did in Avengers Endgame, strapping up the shield and just taking them all on. And then I've realised Corlys has brought the boys in. to the rescue. And there you go. And then what we have is the dragon fire. And for a minute, I thought it was Caraxes coming in to save the day, to help out Daemon, but it's actually Laenor on his dragon sea smoke. I thought that was a great way to introduce Laenor as a dragon rider, because don't forget Rhaenys and Corlys. Rhaenys is a Targaryen, and Rhaenys and Corlys are married, and that makes him Targaryen blood. So no wonder he's a dragon rider. But again, some great dragon shots there, some great fight, and then just the battle ensues then, and the dragon's just kicking ass there. And then the battle ensues, yeah, and I thought the battle was fantastic. Caller's looking again badass in his armour. I just loved the battle. I thought it was brilliant. And I like the fact that it didn't cut away like it did in the first episode. We got to see some blood and guts. We got to see fighting and sword fighting and all sorts of stuff. Another great shot of the dragon there. Some good CGI. We were intercutting between this, the dragon, the fighting, and Daemon Targaryen going for the Crabman. Now, whilst it happens off screen, and it's probably a case that Daemon is not going to be challenged really by the crab feeder. This shot here, let's try and get it. It's probably like this shot, like here, with the dragon in the background, is bloody amazing. Him holding the crab feed, or half of the crab feeder. I mean, that's just a great shot, that is. I think that was the shot that I wanted to get. That one there. Dragon in the background, half the crab feeder. He's done it himself. I don't need your help, Viserys. I don't need your aid. I can get shit done on my own. And he certainly did. Well, that's a bit of a gruesome one. And I just thought that was the most badass episode so far, and the best way to end it. Matt Smith as Daemon getting it done. Right, that's the end of the episode, folks. I hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more content. We'll be doing an episode 4 review probably Monday onwards. So tune in for that one. Stay tuned for that one, and subscribe if you don't want to miss any content, and subscribe if you want to see some more content coming up, likely tomorrow and next week as well. Thanks for watching. I hope you've all enjoyed yourselves. Take care.